So I'd like to talk about how to actually use imagery to write the real lyric itself. There's a process called toggling. Toggling describes the structure of the content. Toggling describes the movement between showing and telling language in a verse section. A verse section might start out very showing and move into very telling language. And so toggling is just describing the way that we move between those two types of language in a verse section. I'd like to tell you about a technique called toggling that helps to understand where, in which lines, to use showing language or imagery, and where to simply tell with summarizing language. When we look at a 4-line verse, which is a really common and effective structure for a verse section, because it falls over, let's say, 8 bars of chord progression, we can see that often that verse ends in more summarizing language, but begins with more showing language, more imagery. And it makes sense, because if you think about a conversation that you might have with someone where you're telling them a story, and you start out maybe by saying, "Oh, you'll never believe what happened." And they say, "Really, what?" And then you get into the detail. The good story starts with setting the scene. Well, so I traveled to Germany this summer, and I took a flight. It was Lufthansa, and we were all set. We had our bags packed at the airport. The flight was canceled. So we were sitting there. We went up to the gate, and the flight attendant helped us and rebooked us. We got into the hotel, stayed overnight, a nice hotel, no troubles. Next morning, we boarded our flight, and I overheard someone say that we could get money back for our flight. All these are details, small details I'm telling. I haven't yet told you the reason why I'm telling you this. That's the punchline. That's the telling language. So the telling language that I would get to is, oh man, in European law is that we get back $600, from our plane tickets for our inconvenience. And my friend would say, "That's amazing." And I would say, "Yeah." And so that's the telling language that tends to summarize. So we start a verse by showing, we end the verse by telling. We start with imagery, we end with summarizing language. So toggling describes that process. So in a 4-line verse, here's the toggling patterns that we tend to see. We tend to see showing, showing, telling, telling. Or sometimes, let's say we have an XA rhyme scheme, we see showing, telling, telling. And it makes sense because that matches the rhyme scheme. In 6-line verses, which is the other very, very common commercial structure, we tend to see rhyme schemes that are XXA. And so a toggling pattern that often goes along with that might be show, tell, tell. Or maybe show, tell, tell. But using a toggling pattern like those can help to identify sometimes where to go with your lyric. It can help establish a good pace, make sure that you're using enough sensory language to draw the listener into the experience, and enough telling language to show the listener why that sensory language matters.